Because to be happy, you need to do something you're good at, something you like, and where you believe you're measurably adding value, and the other party does as well. In the middle of that, that's the Japanese concept. Ikigai is happiness.
Mm.
One of the concerns that you have is that people won't feel the forward motion anymore. They'll be stuck and they'll feel a sense of emptiness. Will they turn to religion? Will they turn to political parties? Something will fill that gap and void. And those are the stories that allow us to scale as a society, because when we started, we were oral. We had our families, we had our tribes. And then we formed countries, we formed organizations. And so we are the stories that make us up. We identify as a Republican, we identify as a Barbie lover, we identify, as a nuclear scientist, or the schools that we went to. But it's difficult, especially in a time of polarization, to try and bridge those stories. Because ultimately, there's a single story, which is we're all human. But all wars are based on the lie that we're not all human. Because killing each other is a ridiculous violation of the story that we're human. But again, we lose sight of that.
Mm.
It's difficult to unify people. Actually, one of the examples I give of this is Google, everyone is smart. Google hires smart people. They did a study to see what identified smart top performing teams for lower performing teams. It was called Project Aristotle. And they came down to two things: a unified mission and story, especially one that's like you have a crunch period and then you all band together, just like Marines also are forced through hazing, etc. And then psychological safety, the ability to say something without fear of reproach. Like they can say the idea is stupid, but not that you're stupid.
Mm.
And if you think about the teams you've had, they have a shared story, a shared narrative, a cohesion, and then that level of psychological safety. Or if it's not creative, they blooming well listen to instructions, right? So you got a few different ones around that. So that's what I mean by stories, and the stories are context, and the context is what these models capture.
All right, let me paint a troubling scenario
Okay.
for you based on that idea of these stories. There are oftentimes things that in isolation are amazing, but they come together in a way that, again, maybe in the long arc actually are amazing and actually do yield what we want them to yield. But we will go through a period where the long arc of history cares not for the individual.
Yeah.
So I think that what's going on with AI, what's going on with crypto may be one of those moments. So as the individual becomes more sovereign, and you have a monetary system that bypasses the government. When I first started learning about what money really was, and I sat across from Robert Breedlove, and he started describing why he liked Bitcoin, what the whole idea of the sovereign individual was, I realized you understand that you're making the government an enemy, or certainly they are no longer powerful, certainly no longer as powerful, and that they're not going to go quietly. They're not just going to let go of that. And so if I have an AI, if I have a team of AIs, 1,000 AIs that are able to guide me far better than any government could ever hope to guide me, that they're giving me real-time data based on whatever it is that I'm trying to figure out in that moment. They're giving me real-time data, extreme intelligence. Oh, and by the way, the currency that I use is Bitcoin. And so I'm not even tied to a fiat currency. It's a global standard. Do you not see the inevitability of the disintegration of governments?
No, I think that Bitcoin and other things, they have a value in certain areas, but I think it's very difficult for most people to understand that value. And most people don't want that value. Most people are quite happy in their communities and they just want to get on with life. I think that governments are ultimately, one definition is the entity with a monopoly on political violence. And money itself is a story. Like a dollar is just an intermediation point that we all commonly agree has value because it's backed by taxes, which are backed by the army and military might. You don't pay your taxes, you're going to get in trouble, right? I think it's difficult for Bitcoin to replace that unless you see a massive deterioration in the ability of the government to be the political violence thing. This comes down to your thing of civil war. It comes down to massive, ridiculous disruption, hyperinflation or otherwise, that just basically takes down a society. I think that's a very dangerous thing. I think most people in the world don't want that. Instead, what happens is when you have disruptions, you have Hayek had a really great book, The Road to Serfdom, and there's an illustrated version of that way back in the 1940s about bringing in the strongman. Like you look at something like the US election or you look at Brexit, what were they? They were referenda. That's how the parties deconstructed it. Are you happy with the way things are? No, let's make a change. And so that's why I think Trump and others kind of get elected.